snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do a joint book review. One of these is a book and one is a novella, and they are Bands of Mourning, which is by Brandon Sanderson. It is the third one in the Wax and Wayne series, the penultimate one in the Wax and Wayne series. There will be one more coming out. And we also then have Mistborn Secret History, which is a novella that Sanderson wrote in the Mistborn world following a character from the initial Mistborn trilogy, but he highly recommends that you don't read this until you've read all 6 of the Mistborn books, including the Wax and Wayne books that are currently out. So, with that said, I obviously read Bands of Mourning first. Bands of Mourning was really good. I was really surprised by how much I liked this. I said in my anticipated releases that I was looking forward to it, but I wasn't looking forward to it as much as I was Calamity, because Calamity was the Sanderson series that I was thinking would be really interesting this year. However, Bands of Mourning far exceeded my expectations. The reason I went into this knowing or suspecting that I wouldn't like Bands of Mourning as much as I did is because when I read The Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self, which are the first 2 in the series, I just wasn't that into them. I think it's because this has a real shift in tone. Sanderson takes the series, the original Mistborn series, and moves it forwards, and we come to a point in time where it's kind of the Western style revolution era, and it doesn't really work for me, that time period. I think that's the main thing that it is that I don't really enjoy sort of flintlock fantasy, and this definitely has vibes of flintlock, and I don't really enjoy industrial revolution as a time setting, and this definitely has vibes of that. But with all that said, I do think that this book in particular, Bands of Mourning, was far superior to the previous 2 in the series, and definitely brought back some of the epic fantasy elements that I was particularly missing from the original trilogy. I felt like this story was interesting right from page 1, and that was something I couldn't have said about the first 2 in the series. When we pick up this story again, we are following Wax, and we get a flashback scene initially, which tells us about Wax as a child, where he grew up, and how he was part of the Terracemen, which is a really interesting religion that makes up part of this world, and has very much evolved in some interesting ways since the original Mistborn trilogy. I found it fascinating to see more of Wax's history, but also to see more about the progression of the Terracemen and how Sanderson was approaching their development is after the events that ended the series, the original series. I thought that was fascinating. So instantly I was drawn into this way more than I had been in the previous 2. Also, at the ending of the second book, we get hinted that there are new exciting things to come. I won't say what they are, but we get hinted that there's exciting things to come, and this book definitely delves into some of that. We get to meet some really interesting new characters who come from an entirely different place a bit later in the novel, and that's really fascinating. We also get some revelations that we haven't necessarily expected to come, and I found them all very exciting, although I did anticipate one, but the others I definitely didn't. And we also get some excellent character progression. I have felt like the characters in this series, the Wax and Wayne books, so far haven't been as developed as Finn and Ellen were as characters, and I just didn't connect with them as much. But I feel like in this book we really do start to connect with characters on a whole different level to the previous ones. I felt like Wax and Wayne had a much better dynamic in this book, and although I have always liked Wayne as a character because he is the sort of comedic relief, jolly, funny, quirky character, I still didn't love Wax as a character that much. I felt like he was a little bit stuck up and irritating, but in this book he wasn't. He was a great character, a real asset to their team, and a really interesting investigator who had a lot of stuff that he uncovered and developed and found out about. And he did make a few mistakes, as all characters do along the way in their stories, but I felt like he handled them really, really well, and he relied on the people around him. And that's something else that Sanderson does in this book as opposed to previous ones. We have already met the characters of Marassi and Steris in previous books. They're both female, and I felt like both of them were pretty terrible characters in the previous few. They haven't felt like strong characters. They felt very weak, they felt very underdeveloped, and they didn't feel like they were genuine, whereas in this book I definitely felt like they did feel genuine. I personally find it hard to connect with Steris as a character. I find her a very different interesting type of person to me personally. I don't have any sort of form of anxiety or any sort of mental health issues, whereas I feel as though Steris as a character probably does because of the way she acts. She's very, very organised to a point of extreme, and she's very, very intelligent as well. And I personally didn't feel like I could relate to her sort of over anxious anxiety condition, but I did think that she was a really great character at times, and although I didn't relate to her personally, I could see her usefulness and I could see the way that she helped the other characters in the story a lot more in this book. She was much, much more a part of the team and much more of a wonderful character overall. We also get development of Marassi and Milan, who are some other female characters, particularly Milan's relationship with one of the boys, I won't say who, really interested me, and I really liked the way that the Kandra came into the story again. I also felt as though the overall world building was more interesting here because we get to go out of the central city and we get to see some of the outer suburbs, and we also get reference to things further afield and the roughs, and I really enjoyed being able to not just stay in one place but also to open up the world, make it feel a bit more expansive and give us a little bit more. In terms of the magic, we learn a lot more about the potential of the magic in this world and the things that are now available to our characters because it is the Industrial Revolution. They have access to new things, and things are starting to change in terms of magic and the potential and what people can do, and that's really, really fascinating. We also have a look at some sort of steampunk elements that come into the story in this, and I really enjoyed that as well. So basically what I'm saying is that this book was a huge, huge improvement on the previous two, and I felt like it was absolutely fantastic the whole way through. And again, it's a quite short book like the previous two. These are much shorter than the original trilogy, and they read a lot quicker as well because it is an adventure story at the heart of it, but this one had some more of the epic fantasy thrown back into it, and I felt like that really improved it as a whole for me. I just really loved this story, guys. It was fantastic. The only slight thing that I detracted a star for was because I can't connect with Steris personally, which isn't really Sanderson's fault, it's just something I don't have a connection to, and also the fact that I did predict one or two things, but they were minor things. I didn't predict the overall stuff that happened, and some of it was pretty crazy, which leads me on to talking about Mistborn's Secret History, which is the novella that Sanderson secretly published. Basically, this novella has been in the works since 2004, which is way back when he started writing the Mistborn series, and he started writing this after the ending of the first book in the Mistborn books. So if you know how the first book ends, then you'll know why he might have started writing this. However, I'm not going to say anything more about that. All I'm going to really say about this is that it is exceptional. If you have any interest in the Mistborn world, or if you have any interest in the Cosmere, which is the universe where all of Sanderson's books are set, you need to read this. To be honest, you don't have to read all the Wax and Wayne books, because I know some people don't like the Wax and Wayne books and haven't continued with the series. If that is you and you really don't like them, you don't have to read them to read this. You can just read the first 3 books. However, if you do want to get the full Cosmere experience and you do want to understand things a little bit more, then reading the Wax and Wayne books before this is a good idea, and it's definitely the way that Sanderson himself recommends you go. I would say that I would recommend that you do it his way as well, but I know some people don't want to read the Wax and Wayne books because they're not interested in that style of writing, and I can understand that because I wasn't myself. However, I will say that Bands of Mourning is great, and this one is spectacular. This was definitely, right from the first few pages, a 5-star read for me. There was no question in my mind. It deals with the Cosmere in ways that Sanderson has never addressed openly. It deals with the Cosmere in ways that he has hinted at, but we haven't necessarily had confirmed. And it also brings back characters that we have had reference to in the Mistborn books, the original series, and also the last few books. We have seen the way that the world of Mistborn has progressed since the ending of the 3rd book, and this story is told in tandem with the 3 Mistborn original books. So basically it's told from the point of view of a character who doesn't appear in the original series after book 1, and it's told from the point of view of that character. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's exceptional, and if you like Sanderson and Cosmere, you will love this, I have no doubt. It is just flawless in every sense of the word. I was absolutely in awe of how imaginative Sanderson is and how he manages to tie things together years and years and years after the actual book has been published, and how things fit so wonderfully well because he's been planning this for such a long time. It just works, guys. It really does, and it's fantastic to read because I got through it in like a couple of hours, and I was talking to Lindsay from Lindsay Ray. I'll put a link to her channel below, and we were both getting so excited about this because it is just exceptional. There is so much revealed in this that you just could never have guessed, and it's so good. It's so good. Just read it. If you've read the first few Mistborns, or if you've read all of the Mistborns, then read it. Don't read it if you haven't read the first 3. Definitely don't do that, because that will hugely spoil it for you. But as long as you've read the first 3 or the first 6, then please, please, please check it out, because it is so good and I loved it. So that is my review for Bands of Mourning, which got a 4.5, and for Mistborn Secret History, which got an instant 5 stars. I would love to hear your thoughts if you guys have read these, because there is so much to discuss from the ending of both of these, and so much to discuss. Thank you all for watching. Leave me all of your comments below. I'd love to hear them, and I will see you all again soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat.